I got to tell you, the big question that I have been fielding for months, people have called me and wanted to go to lunch to ask me this question, to talk about it for, hours on end. And that is, Lance, when is the best time to list? A number of different companies have done extensive research on this, Realtor.com being one of them. And so there was a recent article that was out from Realtor.com. It was by Hannah Jones, and it was released back on the 12th. And they went through and looked at a bunch of different data. And I wanted to go over those data points to say, okay, what do the experts use to decide when the best week is to list your house? So if you're thinking about selling, I'm bringing this up now.
Okay.
Because it's coming up in about 2 weeks. April 13th to April 19th is statistically the best week of the year to list your house. So I'm bringing this up also now because as people might be like, well, I don't know if I can get ready in 2 weeks. But there's also a stat out there that says 53% of home sellers prepare their house in under a month. So some people might be out there saying like, okay, I'm thinking about it. I'm considering it. And we do a lot of consultations like that. I went on a number of them last week where people are like, hey, I'm going to be selling. What do you think I need to do? And a lot of times people are more ready than they think and can actually be on the market within a couple weeks. So what type of bump are we talking about? So if we like, come on, Lance, 1 week out of the year that you picked out, what kind of difference can that make? So that week, on average, sells for 1.1% higher. So if we're looking at an average sales price in the Tri-Cities of, or anywhere for that matter, nationally, I think we're like at 480, at 450. That means you're going to put about another $4,500 in your pocket if you're listing that week over other weeks. Now, compare this to the beginning of the year because I start getting these calls in January and February. Compare that to the first week of the year in January. Now, other markets have weather and things to consider.
Yeah.
But that's about 6.5% higher than the first week in January. So if you're waiting till this prime week, that's almost $27,000 more than had you thought about doing this the first week of January because we had to. You could do quite a bit with $27,000.
Yeah.
And honestly, you might need that to buy a car, considering some of the news that came out this week with tariffs. So you might need some of that extra money. So if we can get it for you in housing, you might need it for automobiles in that situation. Okay, what are they looking at? How can this possibly be? What is happening in this week that's coming up that makes things better? Well, number one, and we talk about this a lot, above average buyer demand is one of the key stats that they focused in on. So more people that are looking at your house, more likely to get offers. Okay, this is better for you as a seller. And in the cycle of real estate, buyers are normally ready faster than sellers. Okay, we were talking about sunshine and good weather as the start of the show. Well, I got to tell you, we can measure. I mean, we track everything, so we can measure the number of phone calls that have come in over the course of the last week when the temperature's gone up by 20 degrees. And it's not quite 50%, but inquiries and calls almost double in the last week over previous weeks. And so what happens is buyers are ready. Like they're out, they're on walks, they get excited. Well, they get ready faster than sellers. So like sellers are like, oh gosh, I gotta, mow the lawn and get ready and do all this. And so they're going to be looking before there's a lot of new listings on. So that's part of why this week coming up in 2 weeks is such a good week, because you have above average buyer demand, but the same amount of inventory that we've been having. The bump isn't quite here yet. Now, look at this. Okay, when I looked at some of the Northwest metro areas, they broke it down per metro areas. So I went to the Portland, Vancouver market, to that metro market, and looked.
Okay.
And list prices, the prices going on the market that week were up last year 3.6%. And property views that week of April were up 27%. That over average weeks. That is a massive, massive increase. And days on the market, -9. So they were selling. So during that week, homes that sell coming up April 13th to 19th will sell on an average 9 days faster than the market average.
Wow.
Now, when we go to Seattle, it's even crazier. That week, the list prices go up 10%. Property views that week in general go up 22%. And here's a kicker for you. Price reductions that week are down 46%.
Wow.
So what's happening? A lot of people end up at the end of the fall market. People tend to, like, let's say, okay, man, I know I always hear spring and summer, time to sell, spring and summer. Well, if they misprice the home during the summer market, or they don't have the demand, or rates go real high, at the end of that market in the fall, they will start cutting prices to try to get interest and get it sold before the winter. That is not happening in an April spring market. So you see less price reductions, more buyer activity, and that's how you get that bump in prices. And so it's interesting how all of this collides on a singular week in April. But the takeaway is that you can still make this happen. And it really kind of signals and kicks off like a strong market. And then if you couple with it what wasn't factored into the study that Realtor.com did, so I take all of that data, and I always say, like, what we do in real estate is 80% scientific and like 20% artistic. So I can give you the scientific portion of this, and I know that's going to be really good. Here's what else could happen in the meantime. Interest rates could trend down a little bit, which they already have been since the last Fed meeting where they held it steady, and then there were additional indications that rates would be held, or there would be some negative economic data that would actually drive rates lower. So the markets responded, and rates are moving lower based upon that data. You couple that with amazing Tri-Cities weather, or any market that you're in, that type of weather. You couple that with all of the scientific data, and you have the perfect storm for an amazing week for selling. And that's what can happen in these spring markets. So what about that week also makes it awesome for sellers? And I got to tell you, we talk about this a lot, and you've heard me mention this in other times of the year, but specifically here is you have lower competition from other sellers, meaning that we are going to be early in the spring market. Inventory from now till November, traditionally, and for sure October, we generally see inventory levels climb, meaning more people are putting homes on the market. It's easier. It's lighter outside longer. The homes look better and sell better. So what we have happening this month and early is people that are ready to go on the market, they're getting on the market ahead of those other sellers, and we're seeing a spike in buyer demand. And so this week, typically, we'll have 13% less homes on the market. More choices for buyers later is less advantages for sellers. So with not as many sellers being ready yet, if you are ready and you're going on the market now, you're getting a head start on the spring market, and that likely will result in a higher sales price for you as a seller. The other thing that is happening in that is the weather has been very, very good. We talked about this. So what happens when the weather's really good? Well, early, the smart ones take a drive around your neighborhood. And there's that guy, if you look, and my wife makes fun of me for this, there's that guy, his lawn is already perfectly green, right? He's been watering it with the city water, and that's a whole nother. Do not send me emails about that. I know what you guys all think about that. I don't need to hear about it. But there's that guy in your neighborhood. He's been watering with the city water to green up his yard before the irrigation water comes on.
Yep.
And it looks amazing. Like you'll see it when you drive home. And if he puts his home on the market, guess whose is going to sell? His, right? Because the other lawns are going to be dead and they're going to wonder if they even take care of them.
Yes.
So there are advantages that people are able to do some tricks and tips right now to sell for the most amount of money. And that's what's happening with some of these homes that go on the market in the next couple of weeks. And yeah, I do the same thing, and my wife makes fun of me for it. So there you have it. You can turn me in to the water police. Okay, but those are some of the things that are happening right now with home sales. The next thing, and we briefly talked about this before the break, is that we talked about this specifically with the Seattle market and the Portland market, but on a national level, is the price reductions are 20% less. You don't have a lot of homes that are having to price reduce. There's a lot of expectation that the market will be increasing as we go into the spring, that homes will be looking better. And they do. I mean, the appointments we're going on now where, you have patios and the doors are open and beautiful and the furniture is now coming out of the storage sheds and going on patios. They are looking nicer. And so in that situation, we see a lot less price reductions happening. The other thing that I think is very unique to this year, which will cause this statistic to remain true. So we're talking about, a Realtor.com article that says, what's the best week to sell? Well, traditionally, coming up in 2 weeks, April 13th to 19th, that is the best possible return for sellers. The other thing that we have that I think will also make that true this year is economic uncertainty and shifting market dynamics. I mean, I was poking a little bit of fun at it with tariffs and stuff earlier in the show, but there's a lot of uncertainty there with what's going on. And then people are also starting to believe that tariffs might start to affect the supply chain for home building. Like, it's very, very clear what it's affecting now. And we saw the headlines in the news about autos in the last week and what's going on with that industry. And it creates a lot of turmoil. Well, look, there's a lot happening, and builders are paying very close attention to this, and they're starting to freak out over some of this. And so when we see that happen, we don't know what's going to happen. So if you're trying to maximize value right now, I will tell you the sentiment that we see in the market is that it's not too bad. Interest rates have come back down to a point. Prices of homes, buyers are starting to feel like their prices are not running as fast, and appreciating as fast as they did.
Okay.
And because of that, what that does is that creates buyer demand, where buyers are like, okay, prices are going to stop, running really, really high. Rates are back down. This might be a good time for me to jump in and do that. And so I will tell you that as a buyer, you can mitigate some of that risk, and as a seller as well, I think you can mitigate some of that risk by being in the market in the first half of the year, just because we don't know what's gonna happen there. Now here's a typical response that I get from sellers after I explain this to them, because I talk to them a lot about this. So the typical response is, I can't be ready in 2 weeks, Lance. I missed it. So, am I just out of luck? Well, no, absolutely not. You did not. This isn't just you. This isn't a you missed it show, and I don't think you should be on the market. This is like an optimal price. Like if somebody had all the flexibility in the world and they could just drop a house on the market exactly when I told them, statistically that time is coming up. But we also see if rates can continue to drop. If we see that, I mean, there was like 4 days where it was like 5.99 and I couldn't answer my phone fast enough. If we touch back at that because of different data that might happen this year, and I'm not saying we're going to, but we might. And if we do, then there'll be another big run up at some point this summer that happens. And so you haven't missed it. The biggest takeaway, though, is what are you doing with this information? How are you monitoring this?
Yes.
If we do miss it, what does it look like if we go on the market in May? What does it look like if we go on in June? Are those prices changing much from April? Well, let's look at the data. Let's pull it back out. Let's redo this whole analysis again and look at it and see what it's saying then, and then price accordingly. So we're making changes. We're making changes to that data quickly. We're looking up new comps every single time. It's a new evaluation. We start with the macro data like we talked about today, and then we go all the way to the micro data. And by micro data, I mean, what did your neighbor's house sell for?
Yes.
Yeah, and what did it look like? And so we use all of that to make the property price determination. But I will tell you, it's busy. And I'm not saying, these stats are driven from past markets, but smart people helped prepare, these stats. And I can tell from the phone calls and the listings and the inventory that we're putting on there, it is coming and it is here. Like we can already tell from our pendings, it's been very busy. We are helping a lot of people right now make these decisions. If you got any questions about what we can do and when we need to be on the market, like a lot of you did last week, thank you to all our listeners and referrals. A lot of people mentioned hearing us on the radio and then talking to us in the last week. So thank you for that. But we are right here helping people make those decisions, and we'll be right back next week.